Hey guys, how's it going? So UFC Fight Night Walker versus Zhang just wrapped up, and I'm going to go through the card and give you guys a breakdown of everything that happened this event. So let's just get straight into it. And opening up the card on the prelims was Uran Satybaldiev versus Diyar Nurgozhay. So I went with Satybaldiev for this one. I said by a decision win. It mainly just stemmed from how well I thought he did against Bud A on late notice as well, upper weight class. I thought that would translate to a much better light heavyweight performance from him, and I thought he would outstrike and potentially out-wrestle Nurgozhay. I was actually correct with this one. Uran Satybaldiev took this one. Actually a very impressive first round submission. Very dominant performance. So in the first round, it's a very strong start from Nurgozhay, surprisingly on the feet. Satybaldiev isn't really throwing much, while Nurgozhay's whipping these kicks to the body. They were doing a decent bit of damage, but early on in the round, Satybaldiev backs Nurgozhay up against a cage and unloads this massive right hand. He drops Nurgozhay bad, has him really hurt, and then Satybaldiev dived on top and instantly tries to find this Kimura. They end up standing with this Kimura still locked in on Nurgozhay, to which Satybaldiev jumps it like a guillotine. It's the first time I've ever seen anyone really do that. It didn't really work though. Nurgozhay gets out. It was in really tight though. Probably was doing some big damage to the shoulder, but Nurgozhay escapes it nonetheless. To which Satybaldiev pretty much gives it up and instantly starts looking for a Ezekiel choke from top position. And he slowly starts to lock it in harder and harder. It takes a while to actually submit Nurgozhay, but eventually Nurgozhay taps. Very impressive win from Satybaldiev. I actually think he will be a problem at light heavyweight. He looked absolutely dominant in this fight. One of the few fighters to actually lock in an Ezekiel choke, and he made it look kind of easy. So very excited to see what's next for Satybaldiev. And we'll move on to the next fight. Next up on the card was Xiao versus SuYoung. So I went with SuYoung for this one. I said by a decision win, and it mainly just came down to the resume difference. I thought SuYoung had a bit more of an impressive resume, some better performances, although I did think this one was going to be incredibly close, go to a really close decision. And I got this one correct. SuYoung won this one, decision win. It was a very close fight as well. There were moments where Long was keeping it competitive throughout. So break it down. First round, following a flying knee out the gate, Long doesn't really land much. What he is throwing isn't landing. Meanwhile, Yu just starts to take over as the round went on. He was getting tagged with some big shots, but he was consistently landing good, especially in the clinch. He'd land these really nice short shots at close range. These close hooks, these uppercuts, some knees in the clinch as well. And outside of some leg kicks, Yu was landing the much bigger shots in this first round, especially in the second half of the round. So I think he takes it, although it was close. Long was landing these big shots over the top, landing some really stylish stuff on the feet, but I think Yu took it through consistency. Second round opens up. Both fighters are throwing bigger shots, but Yu is just constantly looking a little bit better in that striking. He's landing a lot more, while Long's throwing, but missing a lot of what he throws. Throwing at these power punches that are whiffing past the shoulders. And again in the clinch, Yu starts thriving. He starts landing these really nice shots in the Thai clinch, uppercuts, short hooks, these close range elbows. And while Long had a moment at the end of the round where he began landing big, causing a little bit of damage to Yu, Yu just won this one primarily through consistency and landing a lot more, while Long just kind of missed most of what he threw this round. And in the third round, while the start of the round was decently close, slowly as the round went on, Long just started landing more and more, harder and harder as well. He tagged Yu with some massive shots in the second half of this round. And while Yu was landing back, he was getting tagged with the way bigger shots, way more impact as well. And at the end of the round, I think Long takes around primarily just through this 30 to 50 elbow combo that he landed on Yu. He threw about 50, 45-ish elbows, all of which connected directly with the head of Yu. Surprisingly, Yu stayed conscious, didn't get cut open at all, but he was throwing left elbow, right elbow, left elbow, right elbow, and Yu was just eating them while firing back, but Long was doing way more damage in this third round. But regardless, it goes to a decision. Yu takes it at 29-28. Good fight from both fighters, very fun fight to watch, especially near the end. Both look good, no real losers in this one. And yeah, we'll move on to the next fight on the card. Next up on the card was Yizha versus Westin Wilson. So I went with Yizha for this one by a third round TKO. It primarily just came down to the fact that Westin Wilson is incredibly easy to finish. He's been finished in most of his fights. The one that he didn't get finished in, he managed to finish the fight quickly against a guy who was also really chinny. So I didn't really trust the resume of Wilson. Yizha's decent. Didn't really see much from him before that. That made me think he was going to dominate here, but I still picked him nonetheless, and Yizha did win this one. It was a very dominant performance, probably one of the most one-way performances on the card. There is another one later in the main card that we'll get to, but Yizha looked incredible this one. He actually made it look way easier, getting a first-round finish over Wilson that was quicker than Gene Silver's. Probably Wilson's quickest finish yet. So the first round opens up and almost instantly Yizha lands a big left hand over the top on Wilson's guard. That had him really hurt. Backed him up against the cage. He was sort of on wobbly legs. And from there, Yizha just starts throwing these big shots. He knocks Wilson down, tags him again with another big shot as he's going down. And Wilson, still in there, sort of starts getting back up to the feet, eating some more massive shots that kept dropping him down before he managed to eventually get back to the feet again. Still eating these massive left hands, these hooks against the cage, taking a lot of punishment. And then once he gets back to the feet, he gets put out with this other big left hand. Really bad performance. He got knocked out badly in this one as well. And I think after this, he probably will be cut. I mean, I think he's just way too chinny for this sport. Yizha looked really good. I mean, no one's really done that to Wilson that quickly. I mean, a lot of people have done it to Wilson full stop, but Yizha made it look really, really easy. Did it quicker than Gene Silva, did it quicker than Joe Anderson Brito, did it quicker than a lot of people. And yeah, very impressive performance from him. Excited to see what's next for him. Fun fight again. And we'll move on to the next fight on the card. Following that, we have Michel Pereira versus Kyle Daukaus. So I went with Michel Pereira for this one. I said by a first round KO. I was a little worried about Pereira coming into this. His last recent performances have been really, really bad. And he has shown issues with his cardio, but I saw Kyle Daukaus. His first run in the UFC wasn't amazing. He's pretty easy to put away himself. He has quite an open stance where he gets chinned quite a bit. And I was particularly worried that he wasn't going to be able to keep up with the explosive style of Pereira. I was actually wrong with this one. Kyle Daukaus took a really surprising upset win. First round KO as well. Good win as well when it came to the finish. So the first round opens up and early on Pereira's landing nicely with body kicks. He's bouncing around on the back foot with Daukaus slowly walking forward, taking quite a bit of punishment, but nothing fight ending. And a minute into the first round, Daukaus lands a nasty right hook out of nowhere that puts Pereira down, had him hurt bad on the ground. And Daukaus dives into top position and starts landing some nasty ground and pound, some really big elbows in particular, which do some real big damage. Had Pereira out, finished the fight via TKO. Pereira did stand up instantly. It did look really bad, like the stoppage was early, but if you look at the way he was taking these elbows, his head was bouncing off the canvas. His neck wasn't really tensed in the sense that you see when people get knocked out, their neck sort of flails a little bit. And that was definitely Pereira. He looked out when he was getting ground and pounded, so I don't think the stoppage was that bad. Crazy upset win for Kyle Daukaus. Will he continue this streak? I don't think so. I mean, I could be proven wrong. He did look kind of sort of chinnable in this fight. He was very open at points. But I think this reflected more on Michel Pereira. He might get cut after this, honestly. He's had 3 really bad performances back to back. Really hasn't looked like he did on the come up since. And man, it was a really bad showing here as well. So fun fight nonetheless, but a really crazy upset win for Daukaus. Next fight on the card. Next up on the card was Rongzhu versus Austin Hubbard. So I went with Rongzhu for this one by a decision. I just saw his striking being that differential between them. And if it did get taken to the ground, which Hubbard does like doing, I saw Rongzhu being able to defend properly, being able to sort of thrive a little bit in the wrestling at points, but mainly just the striking difference was what I saw winning Rongzhu this fight. And I got this one correct. Rongzhu won this one. Surprisingly, very little amounts of grappling, and Rongzhu did look good, but it was a pretty close fight at that. So first round opens up, and early in the round, Rongzhu's struggling to get anything off on the feet. He's struggling with the reach advantage of Hubbard. Hubbard's constantly staying at range, jabbing and sort of landing straights directly to the head of Rongzhu. And then he's also constantly threatening takedowns, which admittedly are getting denied, but they are sort of getting worryingly close. As the round went on, Rongzhu just starts landing more and more on the feet. He starts landing some really big shots, in particular to the head of Hubbard. Continues landing the calf kicks as well, which are doing some visible damage, causing Hubbard to sort of switch stance, be a bit lighter on the lead foot. And while Hubbard was landing consistently, even getting a takedown later in the round, I think the round was still Rongzhu's. He was landing the bigger shots consistently, and constantly pushing that pressure on Hubbard, while Hubbard was sort of relying a bit too heavily on his range. But it was a very close first round. Second round opens up, and early in the round, Hubbard comes out strong on the feet, manages to get Rongzhu to the ground. Rongzhu does manage to make his way back to the feet pretty quickly, where he begins landing big on Hubbard. Hubbard is trying to keep the distance with kicks, but every time he would, Rongzhu would just push back in again, start landing maybe 2 or 3 shots before getting kicked in the sort of chest or stomach to back him up again. And while Rongzhu was landing a lot more dominant shots, Hubbard was actually landing more, keeping the round very, very close when it comes to volume versus power. But I still have to give it to Rongzhu off damage. Very, very close round again, though. And in the third round, Hubbard looks good early in the round. As the round goes on though, Rongzhu starts landing more, the more damaging shots of the fight, and with an uppercut in particular standing out. He lands this mean uppercut. I don't know how it didn't have Hubbard at least dazed. But it was probably the biggest shot of the fight. And in the closing minute, there are multiple points where he has Hubbard pretty hurt. Hubbard's wobbling around, circling around on wobbly legs. Rongzhu does point to the ground where for the last 10 seconds they actually start standing and banging, and probably one of the better recreations. A lot of the time that they'll point down to the ground then start backing up, and there's a case of that later in this card, but we'll get to that. But yeah, Hubbard takes even more damage in the final 10 seconds. When it goes to the decision, Rongzhu takes a 30-27. There were close rounds, but it was a pretty dominant performance from Rongzhu. He looked good here as well. Very fun fight as well. Card's off to a great start. Next up on the card is Charles Johnson versus Lona Kavanagh. So I went with Lona Kavanagh for this one. I just liked his ability to mix it up a little bit more, as well as his resume. I thought his past performances were really good. But I was a little bit worried. Charles Johnson does have a weird habit of coming back in fights and landing big and turning the tides, but for this one, I just thought Lona Kavanagh would be able to weather that storm, mix it up if needed, and take it to a decision. I was actually wrong with this one. Charles Johnson won this one. He was getting beat up quite badly to start the fight, but in the second round, he lands a nasty right hook out of nowhere, puts Kavanagh out cold in one of his signature sort of comeback out of nowhere wins. And this was a very fun fight. So the first round opens up almost instantly into the fight. Kavanagh's landing these big leg kicks. He actually manages to kick the leg out from under Johnson multiple times in this round. But they're instantly doing damage from the jump. And early in the round, Kavanagh lands a big left hook that has Johnson hurt, stumbling around a little bit. And then he follows up with a big head kick that hurts him even further. I was expecting a finish after that, but it didn't happen. But he still had Johnson pretty hurt. And for the rest of the round, wherever Johnson would sort of close distance, he'd get tagged with this big shot from the Kavanagh to the head, or a powerful kick to the body, and Johnson was just being hurt multiple times this round while not really being able to get anything of his own out. He kept having this habit where he'd dip in whenever he'd try and strike that would sort of meet Kavanagh in the middle and allow him to land big. And Kavanagh took this first round very clearly. He had Johnson hurt at multiple points, was landing way clearer, while Johnson just wasn't really landing anything. And in the second round, Kavanagh continues hurting Johnson early in the fight. Johnson's choosing to shoot in for takedowns a lot more this round. This actually backfires though, because Kavanagh not only takes top control every time they would go to the ground, but he almost catches Johnson in a really tight guillotine midway through the round. I thought that was going to submit him as well. Didn't quite happen. But as the round went on, Kavanagh started to slow down significantly. He was getting tagged with some big shots from Johnson, and from there he just stopped throwing in general. And in the closing seconds of the round, when circling around on the back foot, Johnson comes out of nowhere, lands this huge right hook while lunging forward, and it connects directly with the chin of Kavanagh while he's backing up. Had him falling backwards, had him out cold, put him down and out. Really nasty knockout out of nowhere for Johnson, which shows that you can never really count him out of a fight, but man, it was a good performance from Kavanagh leading up to the finish as well. So once again, a fight where there aren't really any losers. Kavanagh looked good. He's going to fight down again, but I'm sure he'll make his way back to the rankings with time. And Johnson, man, he proved that he is very dangerous if you let it stand. So good win for Johnson. Good performance from both fighters though. And another really fun card on the prelims. And closing out the prelims was Maheshate versus Zhang. So I went with Zhang for this one by a second round KO. I just thought his Evan Elder performance, as well as Quillen Salkeld performance on the Contender Series, showed some really good potential within him. While he did lose both of those, I thought they were really impressive performances at points, and I saw that against an opponent where he gets a full camp and gets some preparation time, I could see him causing a bit of trouble. Maheshate, on the other hand, he has a pretty on and off resume, and he does get hurt quite often in a lot of his fights, dropped quite often as well, so I thought Zhang would be able to find that one shot to put him down. I was correct with this one. Zhang won this one. It was actually by a decision with some really close points throughout the fight, so not as dominant as I thought it would be. First round opens up, and Zhang starts strong by targeting all the parts of the body of Maheshate with these kicks, staying out of range from the punches from the taller Maheshate, who's sending these jabs and crosses, but Zhang's doing a good job at staying at distance, blitzing in, landing, and then staying back out at distance. But as the round goes on, Maheshate starts landing more and more, even manages to cut above the eye of Zhang with this kick that glanced the head, didn't really cause much damage, but did cut above the eye. Looked pretty bad scoring-wise when it came to damage. But midway through the round, Zhang lands good, knocks Maheshate down, and from there lands some better shots. Takes him down as well, controls him from the back for a large part of the round, and most likely takes that round. It was close though, with Maheshate looking good in the middle, but outside of that, not really much. Second round, early on, Zhang isn't really throwing much at Maheshate. Maheshate's constantly landing, which makes it seem like his round. But as the round went on, particularly in the second half of the round, Zhang starts landing big in combination while eating these big shots from Maheshate. He took a surprising amount of punishment this fight, got hit with some really big shots and stayed unfazed, not even wobbled or dazed. And on top of everything, Zhang gets a takedown to which he takes the round, in my opinion. It was very close though, but once again, another round where I thought Zhang did a little bit more. And in the third round, Maheshate was winning this round in the striking definitively, but Zhang was constantly getting Maheshate against the cage where he controlled him in a clinch. And while it was a really close round with significantly less volume, I'd have to give it to Maheshate through landing the only real shots of the round. Zhang didn't really throw much in general in this third. But regardless, it goes to a decision. Zhang takes it 29-28. Granted, a really close fight. Each fighter had their moments. It was a bit slower pace, a lot less fun and high pace than the other fights on the prelims, so it was kind of a less interesting fight, but it wasn't anything horrendous, and a good way to close off the prelims. And opening up the main card is Taiyilake Nueraji versus Kiefer Crosbie. So I went with Nueraji for this one by a first round sub. I thought that Crosbie had this massive hole in his ground game that Nueraji was going to exploit. Granted, he is very powerful on the feet as well, so I could have seen a KO or a knockdown that led to a sub, but either way, I was correct with this one. Nueraji won this one. It was actually a first round TKO, and it was a controversial win to say the least. It was a really bad performance while being a good one at the same time, if that makes sense. But either way, first round opens up, and almost instantly Nueraji lands a big shot that causes Crosbie to panic shoot, ends up on bottom position, with Nueraji landing some really big ground and pound from top position, while Crosbie keeps attempting submissions that aren't really getting close. He keeps trying to transition but isn't getting anywhere with them and just eating some massive ground and pound. But while Crosbie was getting back to the feet, Nueraji lands his knee directly to the head of Crosbie while he's still on his knees. One of the worst, most blatant offenses of a knee to a grounded opponent. And it cuts Crosbie open badly, has him really hurt, I think, because he falls over, flops over. I actually thought he put Crosbie out with it, but not quite. He had Crosbie cut badly with it, got a 2-point deduction. The fight continues, and credit to Crosbie. He could have taken an easy win here. A lot of people counted him out, the odds counted him out, I counted him out, and he honestly could have given up, called it, taken the win, gone home. Stayed in the UFC potentially, because he is on a really bad losing streak, so this is potentially his last fight, but he chose to stay in there, chose to fight it out, which I'm surprised they even let him, because that cut was pretty nasty. But either way, he gets taken down very quickly and ends up on bottom position again. And from there, against the cage, Nueraji just starts landing these big elbows, cutting open Crosbie even more. And every time he would throw one, he'd get a bit of air time. He'd like jump up in the air, land this massive elbow to the head of Crosbie. Crosbie stopped fighting back, just held up a high guard. Finished via TKO in the first round. Good win for Nueraji. I mean, he would have won regardless, but that knee was so unnecessary. It really did sort of soured the mood of the fight a little bit. Granted, Crosbie wasn't going to win. From the start, Nueraji was dominating him, and Crosbie did have an easy out that he didn't take, so respect there. But yeah, fun fight. First round finish, brutal fight, but really controversial at moments. Next fight on the card. Next up on the main card was Sumudaerji versus Kevin Borjas. So I went with Sumudaerji for this one. I liked his resume a little bit more. I said by a decision. And I just didn't really trust the resume of Kevin Borjas, which is very shaky to put it best. He has some really bad losses followed by some wins that aren't amazing. While Sumudaerji is consistently pretty decent. I was actually correct with this one. Sumudaerji won this one, decision win. Very dominant performance. Kevin Borjas didn't really have any moments in this fight. So the first round opens up, and it's a really slow start to the fight. Barely anything being thrown for the whole first round. Sumudaerji was only landing occasionally. Meanwhile, Borjas didn't throw a single thing. And while Borjas did get some control time against the cage, Sumudaerji was landing these big calf kicks. Ended the round strong as well, taking some really nice shots off on Borjas. Likely takes a round, granted really hard to score because there was nothing really to score off of. Second round opens up, and similar to the last round, it was a very slow volume start. Midway through the round though, both fighters start throwing a lot more. Borjas actually ends up landing more shots, but is missing most of them, while Sumudaerji is slowly chipping away at Borjas at distance, landing the occasional big shot, like a spinning back fist in particular, that I thought was the best shot of the round. And it is Sumudaerji's spin kicks to the body and constantly getting these leg kicks as well as striking that honestly deal up the most damage in this round. And probably give him the round. You could argue it was close, but I thought Borjas just wasn't throwing enough to consider him winning this round. And whatever he was throwing was often missing. And then the third round, early on, Sumudaerji starts landing more kicks to the lead leg of Borjas, with Borjas being really hurt throughout the round. Sumudaerji was using his kicks as well to keep distance as well as do some real damage to the body. And while Borjas constantly tries to take Sumudaerji down, he ends up in a cage clinch for most of the round, with him even getting dropped with an elbow in the clinch in the final seconds of the fight. Granted, not dropped badly, it's not like he was close to being out, but it was an elbow that came out of nowhere and definitely did a lot of damage. And when the decision comes around, Sumudaerji takes a 30-27, very dominant performance. Granted, not the craziest of fights, pretty low volume, bit of a lower volume, less interesting fight compared to what was happening on the prelims. Sumudaerji looked good though. Borjas, really bad performance, didn't really throw much at all. He could have made an argument for him to win, but he didn't throw anything pretty much the whole fight. And let Sumudaerji beat up on him and take the win. So, good fight. Wasn't particularly fun, wasn't horrible at the same time, and we'll move on to the next fight on the card. And next up was Sergei Pavlovich versus Waldo Cortes Acosta. So, I went with Sergei Pavlovich for this one. I said by a first round KO, which with hindsight is kind of silly because goddamn does Acosta have a chin. But I just thought Pavlovich would eventually land that big shot. I was a little bit worried about the wrestling from Acosta. He is pretty good on the ground and does often win his fights with control time, but I saw Pavlovich being able to land big, put Acosta down and out. I got this one correct. Sergei Pavlovich did win this one. It wasn't actually by a round 1 KO. It was actually by a decision. That wasn't the craziest of fights, but either way, first round opens up. Very patient performance from both fighters. They're clearly both respecting the power of their opponent, not really throwing anything in fear of getting caught on the way out. And while Acosta does start landing strong within the round, Pavlovich wasn't really throwing much. And as the round went on, Pavlovich just started to pick up the volume, which ultimately helped him win the round back. He was landing good to the head of Acosta. At one point, he had Acosta hurt pretty badly. And while it was a really close round, I think Pavlovich landing the bigger shots and doing just more damage in general took the round for him. But it was pretty close. Acosta was probably landing more, but not really with as much impact, or he wasn't really sitting down on his punches as hard. Second round opens up in another really slow round where Pavlovich isn't throwing much. Acosta did slow too, though, to pretty much just throwing nothing. And while he did throw occasionally, it just wasn't landing. Acosta's firing off these big overhands. They're going over the top, sort of hitting the shoulders of Pavlovich while Pavlovich fires back, lands his big counters at close range. His hooks and uppercuts in particular were doing a lot of damage to Acosta. And like the last round, Pavlovich is the only one doing any real damage. Acosta's not throwing anything back, whiffing the shots that he does throw back most of the time. And I thought this one was a pretty clear round for Pavlovich, a lot clearer than the first round. And in the third, they both start trading leg kicks 1-for-1 to start the round. Surprisingly though, Pavlovich is doing better in the leg kick game despite getting leg kicked throughout the whole fight. And after that, it's back to the same shot-for-shot trading, with Acosta missing a lot of what he threw, Pavlovich looking that little bit better on the feet. There is a moment in the second half of the round where both fighters start trading big, trying to finish each other, with Pavlovich landing some really big shots on the granite chin of Acosta. I think any other fighter would be put out by what Pavlovich was landing, but Acosta has an insanely good chin. He might have one of the best chins in the UFC we're yet to see. But after a botched Holloway point down where about 3 shots were traded, it was one of the worst cases of this, and I wish fighters would stop doing it. It goes to a decision. Pavlovich takes a 29-28 in a surprisingly dull fight given who was fighting. I really thought this one would be a lot more explosive. There'd be at least one knockdown or a moment where someone got seriously hurt. The closest we got to that was Pavlovich landing big, having Acosta sort of wobbling against a cage a little bit, but nothing that I could have seen ending the fight. I knew this one was going to go to a decision after the second round because of how good Acosta's chin is. But Costa just didn't really make an argument in any of the rounds, and Pavlovich really took a while to get going, and once he was getting going, there wasn't really any finishing potential I saw. So pretty dull fight. It was still decently fun. I mean, it was just really average, but compared to the prelims, it looked pretty bad. And we'll move on to the co-main event. And the co-main event, Brian Ortega versus Aljamain Sterling. So I had Brian Ortega for this one. I thought it would be a pretty decent underdog pick, and I could see him catching Aljamain Sterling in a submission attempt while wrestling. But I got this one horrendously wrong. Remind me to never pick Ortega again, because this was an absolute horrendous showing from him. Aljamain Sterling won this one. Decision win in a purely striking battle. This fight barely went to the ground. 5th round it did, but outside of that, barely went to the ground. With Aljamain Sterling just looking better on the feet, with Brian Ortega really not even making an argument in any of the rounds to win. I don't know what his game plan was. He looked horrendous. Dealt no damage. Took quite a bit of damage, but once again, nothing fight ending. But man, was this a slow fight, boring fight, hard fight to watch, despite Aljamain Sterling taking a very dominant decision win. So, first round opens up, and surprisingly, it stayed on the feet. Most of this fight stayed on the feet, and in this first round, Aljo was just coming off better on the striking. It was primarily due just to him being the only one landing. Ortega just kept walking forward with a high guard, marching forward on Sterling, trying to get him against the cage, not throwing anything himself, and getting caught with these jab straight combos. Nothing insane, nothing we haven't seen before, but just the basic technicals of boxing, and Ortega was struggling with that. And this went on for pretty much the whole round. Aljo took the round convincingly just through doing what he had to do in the striking, just being that bit better than Ortega on the feet. Nothing crazy damage-wise, but still won the round off volume. And in the second round, it wasn't much different. Aljo's firing off the back foot. Ortega is marching forward and eating these shots from Aljo, but once again, he's not firing anything back. Ortega could have done so much better if he just walked forward, ate the shots, and threw back. But instead, he was just taking unnecessary punishment while walking forward and missing whatever he threw. And in the final minute of the round, when Aljo lands his knuckle against the eye of Ortega in this sort of hook that had a straight arm, it was a weird shot. But it clipped Ortega on the eye. Ortega steps back and complains to the ref about an eye poke, with Sterling very generously stepping back and letting Ortega take some time for this eye poke that didn't even happen. It was a really bad look for Ortega after a really bad first 2 rounds where he did absolutely nothing to convince the refs to give him a round. The judges, sorry, to give him the round. And either way, Sterling still takes it just by looking that better striker. And in the third round, it's yet another round where Aljo's outperforming Ortega in the striking. Not doing anything crazy or showing a high-level striking proficiency, but just doing what had to be done to take the round. Ortega is walking forward, taking the shots, and the damage this round is starting to show on his face. His eyes hurt from the punch in the second, and even the rest of his face is starting to swell a little bit. It's turning red. Ortega did land here and there in this third round. This is probably the first round where Ortega did something. But either way, it was still a clear Aljo round. He was landing a lot better, a lot harder, and just consistently. Round 4, similar to the last rounds. However, Ortega is landing more this round. This was probably one of his better rounds in the striking outside the 5th. Occasionally doing some decent damage. Aljo is getting a bit too confident on the feet. He's starting to try and throw these spinning attacks, and often getting caught while he has his hands low, which is an issue we see with Aljo throughout his career. He gets very confident in the striking and starts dropping his hands, and to here he was getting caught, but consistently Ortega just wasn't throwing enough. He kept getting tagged with these shots, walking forward with a high guard, not trying to avoid any of the damage, just eating it and walking forward while not firing anything off from himself. And that combined with the takedown attempt from Aljo that kept Ortega on bottom position for a good part of this round. Won Aljo this 4th round. So in the 5th, it's 4-0. Ortega needs a finish. And to be fair to him, this is definitely his strongest round on the feet. He's constantly pushing forward. He actually had Aljo circling around the cage where he ended up cutting Aljo off and tagging him with some really big shots. He was trying to chase him down, get a finish. He does land pretty big here and there and hurts Aljo quite badly at points, but well, I wouldn't even say quite badly, just hurt Aljo full stop, which is better than what he was doing in the first 4 rounds. But when Ortega shoots him for a takedown, he gets put on bottom position, and Aljo just starts to take the round back. Ortega does land some pretty good punches from bottom position, some hammer fists to the face of Aljo, who is really tired, so he just kind of eats them and lets the fight go on, but he couldn't get a finish. Aljo also gets some good ground and pound in. It goes to a decision. Aljo takes a 50-45. You could argue a 49-46, but I doubt it. That 5th round was super close. And it was a dominant striking display. Was it a striking masterclass, as some people are calling it? I wouldn't say so. Aljo wasn't doing anything new, wasn't doing anything that showed that he's now a striker. He just did what he had to do to get by every round on the feet, while Ortega put up no resistance. Next for Aljo, he called out Volk. Don't do that. Volk already has probably 3 or 4 contenders. He has Movzar potentially if Movzar wins his next fight. He has Lerone Murphy currently next for the belt. Gene Silva if he beats Lopez. I'd say give Aljo a loser of, well, only if Lopez loses, but give him Lopez if he loses to Gene Silva. If not, give him Yair Rodriguez or maybe even Arnold Allen if Yair and Arnold Allen aren't fighting, but yeah, definitely up, but not a title shot, no way. Ortega, who cares? Give him David Anama, give him Giga Chikadze, give him Steve Garcia. It really doesn't matter at this point. This performance was so bad that I don't want to see him fight a top 10 opponent because I think he'll just go the same way. Really hard fight to watch. Good performance from Aljo, one of his more dominant fights, but man, I'd be lying if I said that this was a fun fight and it wasn't hard to watch. But yeah. And now on to the main event, Johnny Walker versus Zhang Mingyang. I picked Zhang Mingyang by a first round KO. It's not the bravest of picks. I think everyone really thought this was going to happen. Walker just looked absolutely horrendous in his last two fights. Very chinny. Very easy to catch on the chin. Meanwhile, Mingyang has looked really, really good leading up to this fight. I was actually wrong. I think a lot of people were wrong. The odds specifically looked that way. Johnny Walker pulled off this crazy upset win where he came back in the second, got a TKO win. Very, very impressive performance. There were some rocky bits. There were some bits where it did look really bad for him, but he managed to weather the storm and beat a very scary prospect in Zhang Mingyang. So first round opens up, and it instantly opens up with Walker faking a glove touch and trying to get a takedown on Mingyang, where he instantly gets put on bottom position. He actually puts himself on bottom position while trying to take Mingyang down. Mingyang doesn't really do much to even push the grappling. And he spends a decent chunk of this round on bottom position before getting up against the cage, getting held there, and for the rest of the round was just constantly circling around on the back foot, stumbling around on the back foot while Mingyang would occasionally tag him with a big shot. Granted, Walker was firing back and landing his own, but I think this was a clear Mingyang first round through landing more volume, landing the bigger shots as well, having Walker decently hurt at points, stumbling around, tripping around on the back foot against the cage. And man, may I say, that glove touch, the fake glove touch, I hate to see it happen, which was kind of annoying and maybe lose a little bit of respect for Walker, but outside of that, it still definitely was a Mingyang round. In the second round, it starts to look similar to the last round. Walker's repeatedly walking off the back foot. Mingyang's tagging him with these big shots, but out of nowhere, Walker just starts landing bigger and bigger with the calf kicks. Throughout the fight, he was targeting that lead leg with calf kicks, but you can see that he starts putting a bit more behind his kicks in this round. And with 2 minutes into the fight, he lands this calf kick on Mingyang that gives a slight tell. Mingyang sort of drops down on that leg, recovers pretty quickly, but it was a little tell to tell how much that leg was on its last sort of stand, and that it was really hurting Mingyang, to which Walker starts winding up, landing these massive leg kicks which land directly onto the calf of Mingyang, and with a third one actually drop him to the ground. And from there, Walker just starts raining down some really big ground and pound, using his long range to stay like standing and land these big shots from top position. Meanwhile, Mingyang's constantly fighting to get back to the feet. The ref should have stopped it a little earlier. He was getting tagged with some massive shots, but granted, Mingyang was constantly fighting back, trying to make his way to the feet. But either way, he got finished TKO midway through that second round. Really surprising win for Johnny Walker. What's next for him? I don't know. He called out Jan Blachowicz. I actually like that call out. Rankings-wise, style-wise, Blachowicz has looked really slow in his last fights, and I think this is an approachable matchup for someone like Walker and his explosive style. And rankings-wise, it makes sense. If not, that fight could fall through. Maybe the loser of a Carlos Ulberg, Dominic Reyes could be a really fun matchup. As for what's next for Mingyang, rough night for him. I mean, I don't think he prepared for that. It was sort of a situation where it was the one hole in his armor, and Walker managed to exploit it perfectly. I think he'll make his way back towards the top 15. For now, he needs to fight down. Maybe the winner of a Bukauskas-Craig matchup, Modestas Bukauskas versus Paul Craig's happening soon. The winner of that could take on Mingyang. That would be a fun fight. I think it would be Bukauskas, but who knows? If not, maybe the winner of a Rodolfo Bilardo versus Navajo Sterling, which I think is almost definitely going to be Navajo Sterling. That could also be a really, really fun fight. But the options are quite long for Mingyang, and he will definitely come back, I reckon. Crazy good performance from Walker, though. Crazy upset. No one expected this. Is he back? Potentially. I don't know. I think he might get cracked in his next fight, but yet again, he could pull off something like this. Who knows? Really fun main event. And yeah. So that's it, guys. That was UFC Fight Night Walker versus Zhang, and a recap of everything that happened this event. How did we do this card? Well, this week me and Cam actually evened it out. Both got 67% on who would win predictions. Of that, I got the method by 50%, pretty bad, but decent percentage of my predictions were correct for this event. Nothing crazy though. Where would I rank this card? I actually really like this card. I thought it had one of the best prelims of any fight night this year. The first 4 prelims in particular were really sick. There were a few lowlights, particularly Aljamain Sterling versus Brian Ortega. I'd be lying if I said that fight wasn't really difficult to sit through. The fact it was 5 rounds, it really didn't have to be, because Ortega was just putting up nothing in terms of resistance. And there were a few other fights. Sumudaerji versus Borjas wasn't that fun. Pavlovich versus Acosta was kind of underwhelming. But, I mean, they weren't horrible fights. In comparison to your regular fight, it was just average. So I'm going to put this one actually quite high. I'm going to chuck this one at the top of B tier, above Urseg versus Moreno. I think this is one of the better fight nights of the year. It's not on par with the A tier ones quite yet. The main events kind of ruined it, but still a very solid fight night. Next week, no UFC. I'm going to try and pump out some random video. I don't know on what yet, but yeah. And then the week after that, we get Bahario versus Imavov. That's going to be a really fun one. So I'll see you guys then. Bye-bye.